On July 22, 1620, English separatists living in Holland are boarding a ship at Delfshaven to begin their journey across the Atlantic to America. One of the separatists, William Bradford, remembered the day, stating, "So they left the goodly and pleasant city, which had been their resting place near 12 years, but they knew they were pilgrims, and looked not much on those things, but lift up their eyes to the heavens, their dearest country, and quieted their spirits." We will zoom into England and the adjacent area. On this map we can see Ireland, Wales, England, and Holland. It's 1606. On the bottom right, the monarch is shown, King James I. The date is below the monarch. For most of this program, we will be using months and years. However, the English are using the Julian or Old Style calendar at this time, which is different than the Gregorian or New Style calendar used in much of the continent of Europe. The Gregorian New Style calendar is what we use today. There is a difference of 10 days between these calendars. For instance, June 1st, 1606 in England would actually be June 10, 1606 in France, Spain, and much of Europe. I will list both calendar dates when a specific date is used. Otherwise, a single month or year will be used. In 1606, there is a commotion in the region of Nottinghamshire. Several ministers there are opposing King James' pressure to adhere to the Church of England. Some ministers in the Nottinghamshire area claim they should separate from the Church of England. King James at London is the head of the Church of England, so the claim to separate from the Church of England is politically dangerous because it insinuates contempt for the monarchy. We will zoom into the Nottinghamshire region. Nottingham is here. Sherwood Forest is here. The village of Scrooby is here. At Scrooby, William Brewster is active in the organization of a separatist church. John Robinson is the separatist minister there. Separatists are a unique community, and it's important to understand how they fit into the religious landscape of 17th century England. In England at this time, the king is the head of the official state religion, the Church of England. So, religious affiliation automatically becomes political because the king is the head of the Church of England. This is why Roman Catholics would be held in great suspicion in England at this time, because the head of the Catholic Church is the Pope in Rome, not the king in England. There is an opposing faction within the Church of England, the Puritans. The Puritans want to purify the Church of England, but they remain within the Church of England. Separatists, on the other hand, want a complete separation from the Church of England. So separatists claiming to break away from the Church of England could be interpreted as wanting to break away from the king himself. Therefore, it's easy to see why the separatists will be targeted by the state. In Scrooby, a teenager is attending the separatist church. He is William Bradford. In London that same year, King James establishes the Virginia Company. We will zoom out to the transatlantic world. 1607, the Virginia Company founds Jamestown. In that same year, the separatist community in Scrooby formally breaks from the Church of England. We will zoom back to England. So in 1607, there is a declared independent church in Scrooby. Separatist churches are doing something unique. Instead of a top-down hierarchy with bishops and archbishops, the clergy are only active in the local congregation. The laity are active in the governance of a separatist church, and the congregation elects the minister. Thus, Scrooby's congregation is electing its own clergy and acting independently in terms of religion from the king. These activities will not go unnoticed. Shortly thereafter in Scrooby, members of Brewster's separatist congregation are imprisoned. The congregation realizes it may be time to leave England. William Bradford described the allure of Holland, the nation located just across the waters, noting, "By a joint consent they resolved to go into the Low Countries, where they heard there was freedom of religion for all men." Separatists in the previous generation had fled to Amsterdam in the 1590s, so such a transplant had a precedence. We will zoom back into England. The congregation in Scrooby plans to leave England for Holland. The refugees make for the coast, where transportation is waiting. However, in Lincolnshire, they are betrayed by the shipping crew that is to take them to Holland. Money and property is stolen, and the church members who had been robbed are then jailed. This betrayal, robbery, and jailing occurs at a town called Boston. But the Separatists will make another attempt for Holland. 1608, the congregation prepares to board ships in the waters between Hull and Grimsby. But while the ship is being loaded in Hull, authorities are seen approaching, and ship officers panic. Families are separated, as many of the women are not on the ship at departure. Nevertheless, the first round of refugees, after being blown by storms near the coast of Norway, make it to Amsterdam. Though initially separated, more rounds of settlers from Scrooby will come over in the following months. We will zoom into Holland. The Separatists are initially in Amsterdam. In 1609, the English immigrants make their way from Amsterdam to Leiden. We will zoom into Leiden. In Leiden, the Separatists form a community near Peter's Kirk. William Bradford called Leiden a fair and beautiful city. The Leiden congregation is under the leadership of the minister John Robinson and the lay elder William Brewster, both of whom had led the congregation in Scrooby. So in Leiden, the English Separatists have formed a near self-governing community in which their congregation is managed by an elected minister and lay elder, and they see no point in the king having a role in church governance. We will zoom out to the wider region. 1611. Various scholars at Westminster, Oxford, and Cambridge have completed a translation of the Bible into English. King James had sponsored the project, thus this version is still known today as the King James Bible. 1613. Across the waters in Leiden, William Bradford, now in his 20s, marries Dorothy May. Fall 1617. In London, the Separatists have Robert Cushman and John Carver in communication with His Majesty's Council for Virginia, otherwise known as the Virginia Company, in order to secure a land patent for a colony in America. Meanwhile, by 1618, back in Leiden, William Brewster, Edward Winslow, and Thomas Brewer are operating a printing press. This press prints works opposing the Church of England. But there are signs that the Separatists may need to leave Holland. There is the looming prospect of war between Holland and Spain, which might turn a city like Leiden into a war zone. In addition, the English have been in Holland for long enough that a new generation of children have been born and raised. There are fears that the youth are losing their English heritage. But with the congregation at odds with King James, a return to England is not an option. But there is another option. We will zoom out. The alternative is to sail across the Atlantic Ocean and plant a new life in America. And this is why the Separatists have agents in London speaking with the Virginia Company. While a voyage across the ocean is very dangerous, Bradford provides an insight into its appeal, a mission of advancing the gospel of the kingdom of Christ in those remote parts of the world. But where to go across the Atlantic? The Dutch are active in Guyana in South America. This region would provide a warm climate. However, Spain is dominant in the wider region, and if the colony became profitable, Spain would surely overthrow it. Also, Europeans had enough experience with exploration to know that regions with year-long warm weather also fostered a higher rate of disease. But what about Virginia? Jamestown was already settled. So on the one hand, the English are already there. On the other hand, the English are already there. A separatist community in or near Jamestown might find itself right back under the thumb of King James and the Church of England. The question of where to go will take time to sort out. The Separatists will need to acquire a patent from an organization like the Virginia Company in order to have a legal title to land. In the meantime, there is a sign from above. November 6, 1618. A comet shows in the heavens, visible for multiple weeks. A community like the Separatists, who understood all workings as the product of God's sovereignty, would most certainly take such a wonder as a sign. In May 1619, in London, Robert Cushman, the official in communication with the Virginia Company, reports ill tidings from Virginia. A recent voyage to Virginia had ended in disaster, with most passengers dead from sickness and want of fresh water. At this time, King James is aware of the separatist press in Leiden. Leiden separatist materials are being sold in England. Agents from England work with the University of Leiden to seize the Leiden printing press. Thomas Brewer is arrested. However, William Brewster escapes arrest. Though in a different country, Holland may not be as safe as the separatists had hoped. It is time to leave. By June 1619, in London, Robert Cushman has secured a patent from the Virginia Company for the Leiden separatists. This patent provides a legal land title for a plantation in America. In the early 17th century, a plantation means a colony, which is different from the connotation of a 19th century cash crop plantation. And in a separatist context, the idea of a plantation takes on a religious meaning of planting a church. From this point forward, we will refer to the separatists who have decided to leave for America as Pilgrims, in order to distinguish this group from other separatists who will remain in Europe. The news of the late and disastrous voyage from the Virginia Company causes concern. However, another agency comes into the Pilgrims' business about this time. It is the Merchant Adventurers, another London agency. Thomas Weston, the adventurers' agent from London, met with the Leiden congregation. Weston convinces the separatists to go with him and not the Virginia Company. The adventurers offer to create a joint stock company with the Pilgrims. The company will finance much of the voyage in exchange for revenue returns from the future colony. Weston's adventurers hold a patent for the area at the mouth of the Hudson River, an area that could yield significant fishing profits. The Hudson River area is a good location for the Pilgrims. It is close enough to Jamestown that they might receive the king's protection if need be, but far enough from Jamestown that they will retain their religious freedom. The company's initial terms require the Pilgrims to work 5 days each week for the company, and the Pilgrims in turn would have 2 days for personal gain and worship. Profits and possessions would then be divided among all shareholders after 7 years. In England, John Carver and Robert Cushman finalized the agreement and provisioned the voyage. By next June 1620, finalized terms come back from England to Leiden. In the new terms, the Pilgrims are required to work all 7 days for the company. There is nothing in the new terms about free time for worship and personal business. There, Pastor Robinson defends his flock. He writes back to Carver in England, noting, "How much unfit that you and your likes must serve a new apprenticeship of 7 years and not a day's freedom from task." The Pilgrims still need ships. They acquire the Speedwell in Holland. The ship is at Delfshaven. A second ship, the Mayflower, has been purchased in England. The Speedwell will transport the Pilgrims from Holland to Southampton, England. At Southampton, the Speedwell Pilgrims will rendezvous with the Mayflower. The intention is that the Speedwell will be used for fishing in America. The Pilgrims depart Leiden for Delfshaven, where the Speedwell is anchored. July 22, 1620. The Pilgrims board the Speedwell and leave Delfshaven for Southampton. So at Delfshaven, goodbyes are said between the Pilgrims and their family and friends remaining in Holland. The Pilgrims depart Holland, having spent 12 years in that country. Meanwhile, the Mayflower proceeds from the mouth of the Thames River to Southampton. Both ships have courses set for Southampton. We will zoom in to the Mayflower. The Mayflower is also carrying English passengers bound for America. The Mayflower is 100 feet long. The ship, managed by a few dozen crewmen, is captained by Christopher Jones. We will zoom out. July 26th. The Speedwell and the Mayflower are in Southampton, England. Passengers from England and Holland are now together. Let's take a transatlantic view. The trip is some 3,400 miles from Southampton, England, to the mouth of the Hudson River. It is still summer, and an efficient journey with cooperating winds could get them to the Hudson River before winter. We will zoom into Southampton. Southampton today has modern docks lining the water. I will fill those areas in with natural earth so the landscape is more similar to that of the 17th century. St. Michael's Church here began in the 11th century. There is a quay on the side of town where ships load and unload, so I've placed the Mayflower and the Speedwell there. William Brewster, the man who had escaped arrest for his publications in Leiden, is reunited with the Leiden congregation in Southampton. Some other persons here now assembled are Miles Standish, a professional soldier, and Stephen Hopkins, who had already been to Jamestown. Thomas Weston of the Adventurers has come to Southampton from London to solve the remaining disputes within the company's terms. The remaining disputes have to do with how houses and lands will be divided. While these issues are being worked out, the Pilgrims are required to sell butter stores to pay pressing expenses. But there's another issue. The Adventurers, a company with business considerations sometimes different than the Pilgrims, has added passengers to the voyage who are not separatists. The Pilgrims will refer to those passengers who are not separatists as strangers. Nevertheless, on August 5th, the passengers are on board. The Mayflower and the Speedwell set sail from Southampton for the voyage. We will zoom out to the English Channel. The Mayflower and the Speedwell move west through the Channel. The ships are nearing the open sea, but there is trouble with the Speedwell. The ship is leaking. They must turn back. The Mayflower and Speedwell route back to land. They set course for Dartmouth. At Dartmouth, Bradford says they lost time and fair wind. It's now late August. The Speedwell has been inspected and mended. The ships set sail again. They clear the channel. But after they progress some 100 leagues, or about 300 miles, the Speedwell is again awash with seawater. The ships once again turn back to land, this time to Plymouth. It is decided here that the Speedwell is not seaworthy, and she will not be part of the voyage. The Speedwell returns to the mouth of the Thames River with various passengers who have lost hope in the voyage. The stores and remaining passengers from the Speedwell must now be packed onto the Mayflower. Only the Mayflower will continue to America. It has been a full month since the Mayflower first departed Southampton, and the ship has only progressed 120 miles to Plymouth. The long delay in England has already reduced food stores on the Mayflower, and some question whether the journey is doomed. However, the remaining passengers press on. September 6, 1620, the Mayflower set sail from Plymouth. William Bradford noted, "These troubles being blown over, and now all being compact together in one ship, they put to sea again with a prosperous wind, which continued divers days together, which was some encouragement unto them." The Mayflower is off. We will zoom into the ship. There are 102 passengers on the Mayflower. The passengers will share cramped quarters between the decks, a dark, narrow space within the ship. In the early part of the voyage, the winds are favorable. However, by October 1620, crosswinds and storms rock the ship. A large beam at midships cracks. The ship's carpenter, using an iron screw brought by the passengers, is able to repair the ship. Powerful opposing winds force the crew to pull up or furl their sails. With the sails tied up, the ship will now not be thrown around by the winds. The Mayflower then sits at a standstill in the ocean until the winds die down. There are some storms so strong the ship must sit furled for days at a time. Only when more favorable winds blow will the sails be released or unfurled. Then the ship can progress westward. Over the course of the journey, the Mayflower manages about 2 miles an hour over the waters. One crew member is particularly harsh with the passenger. He is the one crew member who dies at sea. The voyage includes a tragedy and a miracle. A young servant boy, William Button, dies. He is the sole passenger to die during the voyage. But where one is lost, another is provided. Elizabeth Hopkins, wife of Stephen Hopkins, gives birth to a son. She names him Oceanus. November 1620. Something in the air feels different. November 8th comes and goes. Night falls. Dawn, November 9. Edward Winslow and William Bradford note, "By break of day we spied land which we deemed to be Cape Cod, and soon afterward it proved. And the appearance of it much comforted us, especially seeing so goodly a land, and wooded to the brink of the sea, it caused us to rejoice together, and praise God that he had given us once again to see land." The Mayflower has crossed the ocean. The passengers had spent 65 days at sea. We will zoom out. The Mayflower is at Cape Cod. The mouth of the Hudson River is here, so the Mayflower is about 230 miles northeast of their legal patent title at the Hudson River. Cape Cod, as its name implies, has great potential for the colony. The fishing resources are well known in Europe by 1620. However, Cape Cod is not technically within their legal rights to settle. Legally, they need to push on to the mouth of the Hudson. The crew is, from their perspective, in a new world, and the coastlines, shore depths, and distances are not known to them. The Mayflower crew will attempt to steer the ship to the south-southwest to find the Hudson River. On the one hand, the Mayflower crew wants to remain within sight of land, as they are traveling along an unknown coastline. On the other hand, being near land presents shallow water hazards for the ship. But the crewmen detect shoals or sandbars in the waters below Cape Cod. Shoals are submerged sandbars that are very dangerous to ships. The ships can become grounded, which can damage or even wreck a ship. Bradford says the Mayflower fell amongst dangerous shoals and roaring breakers. It's November and night is coming fast. With darkness falling on November 9th, it is determined that the trip to the Hudson River is too dangerous. The Mayflower circles back around, facing north. We will zoom back out. The ship will return to Cape Cod, an area outside their patent territory. With the landing now to occur outside their legal area, there is the possibility of mutiny. Bradford noted that among the passengers there were some not well affected to unite in concord, but gave some appearance of faction, and that discontented and mutinous speeches that some of the strangers amongst them had let fall from them in the ship. The passengers, in order to maintain social order, will need to create a document that outlines a social contract before the ship makes landing. Bradford recalled it was thought good there should be an association and agreement, that we should combine together in one body. Night falls on November 9th. It's now the morning of November 10th. The Mayflower is moving north, parallel to Cape Cod. The captain, Christopher Jones, wants to get inside the bay. While the ship pushes north, the passengers are forming their social compact. There are strangers and pilgrims aboard the ship, but the separatists on board are large enough to form a unified body. They strengthen around a leader, John Carver. As darkness falls, the Mayflower is rounding the north edge of Cape Cod. The bay will provide harbor for the ship. Night falls. It's morning, November 11, 1620. The Mayflower maneuvers inside Cape Cod's interior near modern Provincetown, Massachusetts. Bradford and Winslow recorded, "We came to an anchor in the bay, which is a good harbor and pleasant bay, circled round, except in the entrance, which is about 4 miles over from land to land, compassed about to the very sea, with oaks, pines, juniper, sassafras, and other sweet woods. It is a harbor wherein 1,000 sail of ships may safely ride. There we relied ourselves with food and water, and refreshed our people." The adult men on board signed the compact which had just been written. The Mayflower Compact reads, "In the name of God, Amen. we whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, defender of the faith, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and of one another, covenant, and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic, for our better ordering and preservation, and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, offices from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience, in witness whereof we have here undersubscribed our names, Cape Cod, 11 of November, in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King James of England, France, and Ireland, and Scotland, A.D. 1620. The Pilgrims had crossed the ocean. Bradford noted, "They had now no friends to welcome them, nor inns to entertain or refresh their weather-beaten bodies, no houses or much less towns to repair to seek for succor. Yet now anchored off an unknown land, thousands of miles from their mother country, the Pilgrims determined to create a new civilization."